All right, you ready? Will?
Yeah, good to go. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining this edition of the Funding Lab webinar here. We're going to be talking about a very important topic here. It's basically how to talk to investors in your curriculum. You will see that this is about the time when you start actually going out and start talking to investors. So this is a very appropriate time to do so. Just so that we can keep things keep everything streamlined here. Just add your questions in the chat room on the right. This way, I can go ahead and field them over to Will, and then we can that way we can keep things really neat and organized. So I would really appreciate it if you just stay on mute and just add your questions in the chat room. It is my pleasure to introduce Will. He's co-founder of Kandara, one of an FI portfolio company that's very successful at fundraising, and also has a ton of fundraising experience in general. And he'll tell you all about it, all the stories that he's had. And it's just great that you're coming back and giving back to the community. I really appreciate it. So Will, with all further ado, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and get started, and maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. It's great to be back at FI. We did Founder Institute in 2010, I believe it was, in New York. So it's been almost 10 years, way back when FI was just starting. And I have a lot of love for the Founder Institute and the community that FI has created around the world. So it's super great to be back and to see all of you, and hopefully I'll get a chance to meet some of you. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got some slides, and Mike, let me know if this works. I think it should work. Can you see that?
Yep.
Let me just adjust one thing here.
See.
All right. So today I'm going to give a short presentation on the winning psychology of fundraising. And another way to think about this is how to do investor meetings that convert. I imagine many of you are out meeting with investors or will be soon. And I'm going to teach you what I know about doing investor meetings. I know there's a lot of information out there on how to organize a fundraise and how to do documents and how to know how much to raise and all that and pitching. But really what we're going to talk about today is the internal game, like the internal psychological ways of being that are going to make you successful at fundraising. And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So, my name is Will Sachs. I live in Boulder, Colorado. I founded Kandara with my partner, Katie, in 2009. Kandara is a fertility tracking platform that helps women understand their bodies and either get pregnant faster or avoid pregnancy naturally or understand something about their fertility. And then after Kandara was acquired...
la idea de los términos de referencia porque nos ayuda como a todo lo que hemos hablado hasta ahora, como ponerlo un poquito ya en blanco y negro. Y yo creo que eso lo podemos hacer. ¿Sí? No sé si hay algún modelo básico o simplemente decir en un correo, mira, entonces...
Hey, Diego, can you move yourself, please? Thanks.
All right. So I founded Kandara and then ran that for a number of years, and Kandara was acquired last year. And I then founded Get Funded, which is a fundraising accelerator for entrepreneurs, because I thought, well, I could either start a new company or I could help start many new companies and have a bigger impact that way. So that's my intention with Get Funded. We raised about $5 million, or I raised personally about $5.5 million at Kandara, and then we hired a new CEO and we raised more money, and I'll tell you a bit about that story. And then I've helped a number of companies now raise successful seed rounds. So I've seen this so many times now that I understand how to do it well. And so if you're fundraising, some of you might be feeling frustrated or overwhelmed or dejected or demoralized, or like you're going around in circles. Hopefully the Funding Lab is moving you along in the process and you're feeling confident. But it's completely understandable in my view to be feeling some unease about fundraising. It's just inherently a skill that needs to be learned. And once you learn it, you'll have it forever. But until you've done it, you don't necessarily have that skill. So today I want to tell you, you can do this, and I'm going to show you how. You don't need to bend over backwards or put yourself into weird positions to make investors happy. I'm going to show you today that you can stay in alignment and raise the right money from the right people, and without squishing yourself into uncomfortable positions. And you don't need to be a graduate of Stanford Business School to raise money. I think anybody can do it with the right psychology and the right support. So, I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe that as entrepreneurs, we literally create the future. I believe in all of you at FI, and I'm going to show you how to succeed today. And that's my goal. So with that, when we talk about doing investor meetings that convert, we're really talking about how to quickly and reliably run a fundraising process, to remove wasted time from the process, to raise more money in less time, to raise from better investors on better terms. And so as I dive in here, my request is please turn off any distractions that might be around you, like turn off your phone, turn off email, or put your phone in airplane mode, or just put it away, shut down Facebook. What I'm going to show you today really changed my life, because I went from not knowing how to raise money to having this feeling that I can raise as much money as I want for whatever I want going forward. And I want you to have that same feeling. So please turn off distractions and tune in. And my commitment is that I'm going to get you that feeling, or part of that feeling, by the end of today. So my goal for today is to show you two things. Firstly, that I'm going to mute somebody else here. Who's not muted?
Yeah, it looks like we have to mute the other people as well. Some people that just joined.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you mute them too, Mike, or is it just me that can do it?
I think it's just you.
Got a bunch more people joining here. All right, I think everyone is muted there. Right, so my goal for today is to show you, firstly, the winning psychology of fundraising, and then secondly, how to use this psychology to do investor meetings that end with yes, that end with a handshake and a yes. So I'll tell you a bit about my story at Kandara, and then we'll jump into the psychology. So my story is how I went from not knowing anything about business to raising $9 million and creating a company that impacted the lives of millions of people. So back in 2009, I met my wife, Katie, and we started fertility charting. And I just fell in love with it. I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever discovered. It brought me and Katie closer together. It helped her understand her body better. She stopped worrying that she was pregnant every month. And I just fell in love with it and had the desire to give this technology and this experience to as many couples as we could, millions of couples around the world. So I raised a friends and family round. It was $100,000, and we started working on our app. We started promoting the app. We started getting users. We improved the app and built a community into the app. We started getting a lot more users. I raised an angel round and then another angel round. Then we hired a team. Then I decided, let's build a wireless Bluetooth fertility thermometer to make the experience of charting fertility seamless. And so we started working on that and raised more money. Here's some shots of Wink, our thermometer. It's an oral thermometer that syncs with the phone, so it sends the temperatures automatically. This is us at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas and on CNET. Then we hired more people. And then I went out and raised a $3 million seed round, like an institutional round. TechCrunch reported it as 5.3 million because we had a bunch of convertible notes that were converting. Then we improved the app and the product even more. And then we were acquired by Primatemp, a medical device company that's based here in Colorado. So the fundraising story at Kandara was I raised $100,000 friends and family, then $350,000 angel, then a $650,000 angel, then a $700,000 angel. And then I got tired of these smaller rounds and I said, well, now I want to go out and raise a bigger round. So I went out and raised $3 million seed round. And then I left as the CEO. We hired a new CEO and I stayed on the board. And I helped him, who had never raised money before, I helped him raise another 4 million. And then the acquisition by Primatemp. So I've seen this early stage fundraising enough times now that I feel like I have a really tight read on what works and how to be successful at it. So then, as I mentioned, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And I decided I'm going to start Get Funded and see if I can get a bunch of impact companies funded and make a difference in the world that way. And also, there's something about fundraising where I feel that it's a path of self-development. I think when we get the skill of raising money, that's something that we never forget, like riding a bike. And it allows us to go out and feel more agency in the world to raise money for whatever we might want to raise money for. So I want more people to have that skill. As dreamers and entrepreneurs, this is a key skill, and I like teaching it to people. So that's a bit about my story. And with that, we're going to dive into the winning psychology of fundraising, how to do investor meetings that convert. So the first fact is that I'd like to present to you is that most entrepreneurs try to raise money without getting their inner game solid first. And when I say inner game, I mean psychology and the way that we think about the raise and the way that we think about ourselves. And I'm going to assert that the inner game, especially in the early stage, is even more important than your outer game, like what's happening in the outside world. And that could be your traction or your metrics. The inner game at the early stage, I think, communicates more. And I think investors are really investing in you as a founder at the early stages. And so that inner game becomes the most important thing. And so then the question is, how do we improve our inner game, our psychology? And I'm going to assert that it's by taking on ways of being. And a way of being is just what it says. It's a way of thinking and being that determines the thoughts we think, that determines the words we say, that determines our body posture, the way we move our body. It's like putting on an internal costume in a way, or putting on an internal air, and it informs the way we are in the world. And what I'm going to show you today is how to be during a fundraise and how to be during investor meetings in order to get a yes. And in my experience, there's 6 ways of being that I like to keep in mind when I was fundraising. Before I would go into any investor meeting, I would kind of tick off in my mind these 6 ways of being to remind myself when I go into the meeting, if I animate these 6 ways of being, my chances of getting a yes go up by many, many times. And if I don't animate these ways of being, my chances of getting a yes go down. So what are the 6 ways of being? I created a rubric for you guys to remember them. So the rubric is CAT ASP. So there's 3 ways of being that are CAT and 3 ways of being that are ASP. And I want you guys to be able to remember these like boom, boom, boom at any time. So remember CAT ASP. Remember, take an image in your mind of a cat and a snake. Maybe the cat is chasing the snake. Maybe the snake is chasing the cat. I want you guys to have this in your mind. So before you walk into an investor meeting, you can remind yourself CAT ASP, and then you can just go through the 6 ways of being in your mind, and you'll have these arrows in your quiver as you walk into the investor. I'm going to meet somebody else here. Mike, do you know, is there a way for me to mute everybody with one button? Mute all.
Yeah, there's a mute all button somewhere here.
Okay, got it. Great. Okay, so that's CAT. That's the thing I want you guys to remember the most from today is CAT ASP. CAT ASP. Because that's going to allow you to recall these 6 ways of being as you go into an investor meeting, and that's going to improve your hit rate and the number of yeses that you get. So let's walk through them. The first way of being is certainty. And I like to think of certainty as the foundation of a fundraise. Certainty is probably the most important thing you can walk into in an investor meeting with, because certainty communicates more than words. It's if you feel certain that you have a valuable opportunity and that investors will be smart to invest in your opportunity, and you feel certain in your answers to all the questions that you might be asked, you're going to have internal alignment when you walk into the meeting, and you're going to start resonating that certainty with the people that you're meeting with. If you lose certainty, which happens because an investor will ask a question and you might not know the answer, you might not have certainty, you need to find it again. So after that meeting, you think back, okay, what questions did I get asked where I didn't feel certain in the answer? And then my advice is to go and find the answer that you feel certain in. Not just any answer. It's got to be an answer that actually feels aligned in your heart and in your body, and that you believe in. And when you find that internal belief and you give that answer, it's going to create confidence in the mind of the investor that you're talking to. And the more confidence you can build up in the mind of the investor that you're talking to, the more likely you are to result in a yes. And so the opposite of certainty is uncertainty. Anytime you feel uncertain, it creates confusion in the mind of the person you're talking to. So if they ask you a question you don't know the answer, there's a little bit of confusion or uncertainty that's transmitted. And there's a saying that I like, which is a confused mind always says no. So you walk into the meeting with certainty, you transmit that certainty, you stamp out confusion, and then eventually you'll build confidence in the investor and they will feel like they want to say yes. And so you want to be certain about all aspects of your company and the raise. And sometimes it'll be like you don't have the answer. So if someone says, what's your customer acquisition cost? And you don't have that data yet, it's perfectly fine to say, we haven't focused on that yet. I don't know what it'll be. Maybe you have some comparables, maybe I know this company did this and this was their number. This company did this and this was their number. So I expect ours could be this. So you're certain in your uncertainty. And then there's a concept in sales, which is the person with the most certainty wins. And if you think about it, if you're in a group of people and everyone's talking, debating something, and one person is really, really certain about the answer, they typically are going to win people over. So that's something to remember. The person with the most certainty wins. And I felt that over and over when I was fundraising. The investors would ask me questions like, well, don't you think the market maybe is going to be too small? And I felt so certain that the market was big enough that I would just hit them with my certainty. Like, no, I thought that too, that the market was small. But now after doing research, there's this and this and this, and I would transmit that certainty. And transmitting certainty is a great way to think about fundraising. It's really you're transmitting your certainty to investors, and when they get that certainty in themselves, then they're going to want to invest. And of course, investors will attack your certainty because they can't dig into all the details of the business. They can only dig into you, really. They don't have time to go look through every detail and be in the CEO's seat. They have to really rely on you as the CEO. And so they'll attack your certainty. And the dance, if you will, is maintaining certainty, building certainty, and transmitting certainty while the investors are attacking your certainty. So that's kind of what happens, like underneath the words is, do you feel certain? Do you have internal alignment about this raise? And are you communicating and transmitting that certainty to investors? And so the corresponding belief that you want to walk into a meeting with is, my plan rocks and you should get on board. And if you don't feel that your plan rocks, and if you don't feel that investors should get on board, you should really ask yourself why. Like, what is missing? Maybe you need to add somebody to the team. Maybe you need to adjust something to do with your go-to-market plan. Like, there's 100 things that you might want to adjust to get to an internal feeling of, my plan rocks and you should get on board. And when you walk in with that feeling and that belief, that certainty is going to resonate and transmit. And so the corresponding way of being is confident and grounded. confident and grounded. And then I'm going to present the opposite for each of these. So the opposite belief of certainty is something along the lines of, well, maybe this will work. Like maybe I'll go into this meeting and I'll be able to tell a good enough story and someone will say yes. That's kind of the opposite of certainty. And maybe this company will work. I haven't done my research, but I think it'll work. So I'm going in there with kind of half of certainty or less. And the antithetical way of being is deferential and vacillating. So deferential means if an investor says, I think XYZ, you defer to what they're saying, even though it's not what you really believe, to try and please them in some way. Or vacillating, you go back and forth. Well, we don't really know. It's much better to be in investor meetings to show the investors that you've done your homework and that you have answers to every question. Pretty much, there's always going to be a new one that you add to your stock of answers that you feel certain in. And so that's the antithetical way of being. So certainty is the first way of being to do investor meetings that convert. All right, so that's the C. The A is abundance. So what is abundance? Abundance is just sexy. And when you're in an abundant state of mind, you tend to attract other people. And you can think about this when you have, I don't know if anybody, you guys on this call have probably noticed this, but if you're walking down the street with a sexy man or woman on your arm, you tend to have other sexy men or women looking at you. But if you're walking down the street alone, they might not be looking at you. And that's a function of abundance. Abundance creates social proof, and it puts you in the mindset of not being desperate and not needing anything from anybody. And so how do we get into a state of abundance during a fundraise? And my answer to that is lots of meetings. And so I noticed when I was raising money for Kindora that if I would have like one meeting a week, every time I'd go into that one meeting a week, I would feel a little desperate, or like I needed them to say yes in some way. And that feeling they'd pick up on it, and it just wouldn't be sexy. It's like when you go on a date with somebody and you're really needy and clingy, and it tends to repel the person. And the same is true in fundraising. And then paradoxically, when I figured this out and I started to set up lots and lots of meetings, so I would have like 8 meetings a week and I would have 3 other meetings that day, I'd realize I'd walk into the meeting and I wouldn't need them to say yes, because I had 3 other meetings that day and I had 8 meetings that week and I had 8 meetings the next week. Like I was in a place of abundance and I didn't necessarily need anything from this specific investor. So I was able to sit back and I was able to ask them a lot of questions, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And it just changed the whole dynamic of my fundraise. And so I realized lots of meetings is one of the best things you can do as a founder to stay in abundance. If you just have boatloads of meetings, like you're going to be in abundance. You have all these people that are potentially wanting to invest in you. You feel attractive. You feel sexy. It communicates. So it's really powerful. And the fact is that most people do the opposite. They raise money from a place of scarcity. And you hear people saying, like, I'm looking for money. I'm trying to raise money. If you really pick apart this language, like I'm looking for money, I'm trying to raise money, it communicates scarcity. And what you want to do is shift your mindset, use your certainty. So shift your mindset and start to think about, well, I'm actually offering an opportunity. And I'm seeking investors for which this opportunity is a good match. I'm seeking partners that I want to work with and that I want to offer this opportunity to. And when you start to be in that place of, I'm offering an opportunity and I've got lots of meetings and lots of people who want to potentially invest in this opportunity, you start to be in abundance and it really starts to attract people. This is so key, and I'd like to spend more time on it, so maybe we can talk about it in questions. But really, offering an opportunity versus looking for money is a crucial mental shift. Because once you're offering an opportunity, there's a chance that an investor might not get a chance to invest in the opportunity. And it shifts the dynamic, it flips the script, and it allows you to be in abundance. And it actually makes the fundraise easier for everybody. It makes it easier for you as the founder. It makes it easier for investors. They like it better because they get to feel lucky for investing in your opportunity. All right, so if you have questions about that, let's talk about them later. But the corresponding belief for abundance is, if you don't invest, someone else is going to soon. And you always want to have that belief when you're in an investor meeting. Well, if it's not a match for you, then somebody else will invest. And so really we're talking about whether this is a good match for you or not, because I have lots of meetings and I'm in abundance. And the corresponding way of being is unattached. In an investor meeting, you can really like the investor, you can feel chemistry, you can think that they'd be a great match, but ultimately it serves you to remain unattached to the outcome of any given meeting. And if you're unattached, your hit rate's going to go up. The opposite of abundance is some form of, if you don't invest, my company will fail, or I need you to invest, or please invest, or any form of desperation, which is the antithetical way of being to abundance. So anytime you catch yourself feeling desperate in any way, you got to stamp that out. And probably the best way to do that is to get lots and lots of meetings, so you are able to stay in that place of being unattached. All right, so that's abundance. And then the next one, T, is them, is make it about them, the investor. Make it about them. I realized at one point that fundraising is a form of sales. You're selling a piece of your company to somebody and they're buying a piece of your company. You can think about your company as the product that they're buying. And so a lot of what is taught in sales training is applicable to running a successful fundraise. And one thing that I love in sales training that's been really useful for me is this rubric of engage, excite, compel. You want to first, you need to engage, meaning you need to get a meeting, you need to go into the meeting, you need to establish some rapport. Then the next thing you need to do is excite the investor and get them excited about potentially purchasing a piece of your company. And then you need to compel them to actually do it, which is the closing portion of the meeting. And so what a lot of entrepreneurs try to do is they come in, they sit down and they start pitching. And my view on this is, don't pitch until someone's already excited. Like, first engage, get the rapport flowing, start to build a relationship with this person. Then they might ask you, well, tell me what you're working on. And you can tell them, well, we see a big opportunity in this market and I have a history of doing XYZ. And so we've started to do this and I'm really excited about what we're doing. And at some point the investor will probably say, okay, well, do you have a pitch that you can show me more about it? And then you move into the pitch. And then after the pitch, you want to gauge, like, where are they? Where are they in this process of engage, excite, compel? Are they turned off because of something that you need to address? Are they excited? And maybe you can move forward into the compel stage. Like, you really want to make it about them and their process through this process, or their progress through this process. Another way to think about this is, you want to find out what investors are looking for, and then you want to give it to them. Like, some investors might be looking for, they really want to invest in a VR startup. And that's what they're going to focus on. They're going to focus in on the tech and VR and the future of VR. Or they might really be looking to invest in a product in another category, or they might be looking for something that is in alignment with their interests, and that's what they're looking for. Or they're looking for a 5x return and they don't care what they're investing in, but all they care about is that they get their 5x return. And so you want to figure out what that is. And this is a key thing in sales. You engage and you figure out what's important to this investor, And then you want to focus your meeting around giving them what they want if it's a match for you. So the way to do this is to ask questions and then listen intently to identify, number one, the pain that investing in your company could alleviate, and number two, the pleasure that investing in your company could create. So the pain it could alleviate is, I've got this money, I'm looking for good companies, and I can't find any good companies. I can't find companies that fit these criteria. And so you want to identify that pain and then help them alleviate that pain. And then the pleasure they might be looking for is, I want to be involved in exciting companies in this space, or I want my 5x return, or it could be anything else. And so you want to identify what the pain is and the pleasure is and focus in on those. Another thing that I want to mention is many founders, when I'm talking to founders, and I'm sure I was guilty of this myself at one point, like I dive into the details when an investor asks a question. I can't tell you guys how many times I'll ask a founder, like, how much are you raising? And they'll go on this like 10-minute rant about the market and the product and the technology, when they could have just said, like, I'm raising $1.5 million. Or like, how many people on the team? There's 5 of us. How big do you think this market is? I think it's a $600 million market. So many times investors will ask questions, and us as founders, because we're so in the weeds, we just go off and tell them all about this stuff that they didn't even ask about. And it seems evasive even sometimes. And I know that it's just because as founders, we're so in the details, but really make an effort when an investor asks you something like a direct question, tell me about X, or how much, what's your burn? You just answer the question straight up, and that's going to build rapport, and it really gives them what they want. And then the other thing to keep in mind during this phase is this person a good fit for your opportunity? You really want to interview them and find out if this is a good fit for them. Like, is it a good fit for them to invest in your company? That's going to show them that you care about them. You're not just thinking about them as dollar signs or money bags, that you care about them, and that you're considering, like, is this a good fit for them to be in a multi-year relationship with you? And then I already mentioned it, but you really don't want to pitch until someone is qualified, like you feel like they might be a good fit and excited. It's like if you walk into a car dealership and the car dealer or the salesman walks up to you immediately and says, I think you should buy this car. It would feel really invasive, and it would put me off a lot. Like, I want him to come up, engage with me, ask me what I'm looking for. I'm telling him I'm looking for a car that's like this, XYZ. And then eventually, when he understands me and understands what I'm excited about, he might start telling me why this particular car would be good for me. So don't pitch until someone's excited. You want to find out if they're a good fit, and if they're not excited yet, they're not a good fit yet. And then again, like, answer the dang question. I just put that in there because so many times investors will ask questions and they just want a straight answer. And I believe it's a good practice to give it to them. All right. So make it about them. The corresponding belief is, I want to find out if this opportunity is right for you. I want to find out if this opportunity is right for you. I'm meeting you as an equal, and I'm asking you questions. I'm interviewing you to understand if this is a good opportunity for you. And then the corresponding way of being is interested in them and curious about what their needs are and what their desires are and what they might want to get out of their investing. The antithetical belief is, this is all about me and raising this money, where you're really focused on getting the money, and you're viewing the investor as dollar signs, and you're just like going in there pitching and not interested and curious. Oops, sorry. And then the antithetical way of being is like uninterested in them and just like a pitch robot, where you're just doing the pitch. You're not really building a relationship. So I like to say fundraisers are built on relationships. And if you make it about them in meetings, you're going to build and deepen relationship with that person. And if it's a fit, then they'll end up investing. All right. So I'm going to start going a little faster here because I want to leave a lot of time for questions. So The next one, the A in ASP, is to ask great questions. Questions are magical. Questions allow you to open up reality and create new possibilities in the mind of the investor and really anybody you're talking to in life. So great questions are open-ended and they direct investors towards getting excited in your company. So an example of a great question is, if I was going to go buy a hot dog on the street and I went to the hot dog vendor and he's got a $10 hot dog, and I would say, wow, $10, that's way more than I was expecting to pay for a hot dog. An example of a great question that the hot dog vendor could ask me is, do you know why this hot dog costs $10? It's like open-ended. Do you know why this hot dog costs $10? And I would say, no. And he would say, then he could tell me, like, he basically in that moment, he has the ability to direct my attention in any direction that he wants. He could say, well, the meat in this hot dog actually comes from this specific area of Sicily where the artisanal butchers spend hours and hours a day tenderizing it. It's the most delicious meat that you'll ever taste. And then all of a sudden, now I'm leaning towards, well, maybe I want to pay $10 for this hot dog. And so whenever you're in an investor meeting and somebody brings up an objection or there's a lull and you don't really know what to say, asking a great question is probably the best thing that you can do. So an example of an objection might be, I think the valuation is too high. And so the way I would handle this is I would first handle with alignment. So I would align with the investor first and say something like, I've heard that from other people. It's not the first time I've heard that. Or, I thought that maybe it was a bit high at first too. And then you want to ask a great question. So in that case, you could say, I think the market potential for this company is XYZ, like, $100 million or $500 million or whatever it is. What do you think if we reach that, what kind of return, like you would get a so-and-so return, would it still seem too high to you in that case? So you're not telling him anything or her anything, but you're asking a question that opens up the possibility that maybe there's something they haven't considered. And we can do more of those in the question and answers. Some great examples of great questions. What would make you very excited to invest in this company? If you were to invest, how much would you want to invest? That's probably my favorite question when closing investors. If you were to invest, how much would you want to invest? Because it puts the investor in the mindset of like, how much would I want to invest? And they might say, okay, 50K probably. And then the next one, another great question. Well, what other information would you need to make a final decision? And then they're going to tell you, well, I would need to talk to my partner. I would need to feel more confidence in the team. I would need to see a demo, whatever it is. In sales, these are called test closes, and you're really drawing out of the prospect or your investor what information and what objections they have. And then when you have that information, you can use it to move them towards a close. So the corresponding belief is the more I understand you, the closer we'll get. I really want to understand you and build a relationship with you. And the way of being is interested and curious. The antithetical belief is some form of you are stupid or silly or wrong, and I am smart and right. And the antithetical way of being is stubborn. You never want to feel stubborn in an investor meeting. You want to feel interested, curious. And if you catch yourself feeling defensive or stubborn, the best thing to do is to program yourself to ask a great question. Like get yourself out of stubbornness and defensiveness by asking more questions. All right, moving on to number 5. Number 5 is story. Tell a great story. People remember stories, and raising money is all about storytelling. The simplest story that you can tell is, it used to be that XYZ, like the world used to be this way, but now it's like this. So that creates a giant white space for us to do XYZ and create a world where ABC. And telling that story is what people are going to remember. Often we forget that, you guys are not going to remember probably 90% or 80% of what I'm the details of what I'm talking about today, but you might remember CAT ASP, and you might remember some nuggets from each of these. And that's the story. It's like, hey, this guy, Will, came, he had this rubric of 6 ways of being to be in investor meetings, and I've got them now, and I can refer back if I feel like this is going to be useful for me. And it's the same with investors. When you pitch an investor, they're not going to remember every detail. They're going to remember the story. So craft the story, tell the story, revert to the story, make sure that they get the story of your company and the difference that you're trying to make in the world and how you're going to do it. And that's what's going to stick with them. So the corresponding belief is there's a great story behind this company, and I'm going to tell it to you. And the corresponding way of being is engaging and excited. The antithetical belief is this company is boring, or I'm not excited about it, or like there's a lack of excitement in me, and I'm just kind of going through the motions of telling you about it. And the antithetical way of being is dull. All right, so now we're at the last one, and the last one is process. Run a tight process. And you guys are in the funding lab, so you have an amazing amount of infrastructure to focus your process. But a process is what knits all this together. And a lot of entrepreneurs go out and raise money without a paced process, and they end up either raising for a really long time or being not successful. And so a tight process is your friend to focus on fundraising intensively for a short period of time, get it done, and then get back to building your company. A way to think about this is to bake a cake, you need a recipe. To build a deck on your house, you need some plans. To win a football game, you need to know the rules of the game and have a winning game plan. All of these are processes that we use in order to accomplish a task. And in a fundraise, you want to have a winning process. In Get Funded, I teach a process that's based on agriculture that goes from tilling to planting to watering to harvesting to closing. And I've looked over the Funding Lab curricula, and I think it matches really well. And so having a process helps because you know what stage you're in at any point in the process, and you know what to do. So you know that you need to get your story first, and then you can seek a lead or a first mover, and then you can get tons of meetings, and then you can start getting commitments, and then you can close. And you can't do one step before you do the preceding step. So the corresponding belief for having a tight process is, I know what to do today. I know what to do every step of the process. And the way of being is awareness of, I'm aware of where I am in the process and what I need to do now in order to set up the next step. In order to set up the next step, boom, 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 eventually to close. The antithetical belief is this fundraise could take forever. I'm kind of just doing it without a process. And the antithetical way of being is scattered and unorganized. So those are the 6 ways of being to kick ass in investor meetings and to get yeses: certainty, abundance, make it about them, ask great questions, tell a great story, and run a tight process. CAT ASP. I want you guys to remember that. And just go through it maybe tomorrow after this meeting. And before you walk into every meeting, just go through these, like certainty. How certain do I feel? Am I in abundance? How can I get into abundance? I'm going to make it about them. Find out what's important to them. I'm going to ask a lot of great questions, which are open-ended questions that steer people towards excitement. I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to know where I am in the process. So, there's thousands of founders out there who deserve to be funded, but no one has taught them this winning psychology. And if you have a psychology and you hone it meeting by meeting, you will succeed at raising money. I was a first-time male founder running a women's health hardware company with no revenue. There were a lot of strikes against us in a way, but because I honed my psychology, I was able to succeed. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I want to leave a lot of time for questions. I want to mention briefly the Get Funded program. So it's an online program, and I believe it's the ultimate fundraising program to end wasted time, to get your psychology right. I talk a ton about inner game and getting aligned internally. And if you guys are interested, I just want to give a massive discount. I usually sell it for $2,000, but I want to give a discount to anybody in FI, 75% off. You can go to getfundedcourse.com, and the discount code is FI. And And then feel free to email me also. Get in touch with me if you have questions after this. I want to support all of you. So, you guys know where to find me, and please reach out. And then Get Funded is guaranteed. If you don't like it, I'll give you your money back. I believe it's the best program to get your internal game tight as you move into fundraising. So with that, I'd love to open it up to questions.
Amazing. That was a great presentation. Before we dive into questions, everyone here on the call, just hear me out on this. Schedule this out. Create like a calendar schedule for yourself, maybe every Sunday before you start the week, and just schedule this webinar, right? Just watch this, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to be going 10, 20 meetings a week, and just having this and just revisiting this will be extremely helpful for you. So we're going to we're recording this now. We're posting it in the Slack. We're going to also email everybody, so don't worry about that. But just schedule yourself like right now, like I'm going to go back and rewatch this because this is so critical. If you're not confident, you will have a hard time here. That being said, there's a chat room on the right-hand side for you, for people, also the bottom of your screen. We're going to be fielding questions via the chat. That way it's a little bit more organized. And, the first question here is from Nick. And, he's referring to the certainty part, right? And he's asking, what are some of the things that we can say? Can we say like things like the research we did on Google, like the website says this? Can you talk a little bit about that and some of the things?
So I think that relates to being certain in your uncertainty. Like you won't have the answer to every question because it's impossible to know the future of what's going to happen with your company. It's sometimes impossible to know things that like customer acquisition costs. We don't know. But you want to be certain in your answer. You want to say, well, we don't have a good, really tight number on that because we haven't focused energy on that. But we've done research, and based on our research, we think it should be between $5 and $8. Like you just want to be certain in that answer. Like I don't have the answer, but I'm certain that I don't have the answer. And like I really think if you think about it below the words, like underneath the words, there's a feeling of certainty, and you want to have that feeling with every answer that you're giving an investor. And you'll notice in investor meetings, you'll get a new question out of left field that you have never heard before. Like, my uncle is invested in this company and they're doing the exact same thing that you're doing, and you've never heard of that company before, right? So in that, it's hard to have certainty there, but you can say, I'm not familiar with that company. And I'll research that after this meeting, but I am familiar with these other companies and this is how they're different. And that might throw you off in the meeting. Like somebody throws you something you don't know, you haven't heard of this competitor, right? And you don't know anything about them. That's going to throw you off in that meeting. But you better make sure it never throws you off again in any other meeting. So the first thing you do after that meeting is go research that company, find as much as you can out about them, email them, set up a call, talk to the CEO or founder. So then the next time someone asks you, hey, what about XYZ company? You can say, yeah, I know Don, who's the CEO. I've talked to Don and their plan is ABC and our plan is slightly different. We're going after different verticals. So, he's a friend of mine, an associate, and then you just look like a total badass because you've done your research and you've like at Kandara, I made sure to know all my competition by name, and I reach out to the CEOs and see if I could get a call with them. And so when an investor asks me a question, I'd be like, yeah, I know that person and I know their company. Here's what they're doing. And here's why it's different than what we're doing. And that's the best answer you can give. So yeah, I think that's my answer on that one. You're going to get thrown off. And the key is to not get ever thrown off by the same question twice.
Yeah, and to do that, how we try to help you mitigate through that is that we're going to have you create a list of all these questions, and then eventually you'll be able to go through them and rehearse them. There's a question here from Majdi about, around stories. So can the story be why we started the company?
Yeah. I think the story that's a great story. We started the company because of this personal experience. The one that, at Kandara, my story was I met Katie. We started fertility charting. She told me there was this method of avoiding pregnancy that was as effective as the birth control pill, but was totally natural. And I thought she was nuts. And she gave me some information, and she gave me a book to read, and I read the book, and then I started delving into the research, and I discovered by tracking fertility signs, we can help people get pregnant faster. We can avoid pregnancy naturally. We can understand hormone problems. This is an incredible amount of data and understanding that we can get from tracking this data. So we wanted to give this to everybody. And as we've moved forward with this idea, it's resonating with women, and we're hearing from women. And now here's where we're going with the company. We want to be a women's health platform that's delivered through the mobile phone to help women have a better time with their fertility. So I think usually I think most of the people on this call, your story is probably something to do with a personal experience you had, or an opportunity you saw, or some passion of yours that feels alive. Focus on that and resonate on that when you're telling your story. I think that's a really powerful thing to return to over and over again, because that's really your why. Why are you doing this? For most people, it's not just the money. There's some other passion that underlies the story.
So there's a question here from Yaroslav. When is the the right moment to interview the investor to see if they're a good fit?
Yeah, I would say from the first moment you talk to them. So it's funny. There's this power play that happens in my experience. There's a lot of ego in the world of raising money and in investors. There's just kind of a lot of ego in my experience. And so as soon as you start talking to someone, you want to start establishing that you have an opportunity that they may be interested in. And you want to find out if they're a right fit for your opportunity. And they're going to try and interview you and figure out if they should keep talking to you and if there's anything interesting here. So it's you're both interviewing each other, and it works best when you're on the same footing. And so you're not a lot of entrepreneurs, when we just start out, we see investors as being up here and we're as entrepreneurs down here. And so we act desperate and we try to please them, and it just doesn't feel good for anybody and doesn't really work. And then as you get into more fundraising, you sometimes realize, I don't know if anybody's seen the Silicon Valley episode where they start negging the VCs, and then all the VCs start getting interested to invest. So there's a way of being where you're above the investor, and you're really being kind of a cocky a-hole. And that can work sometimes, but it's not really authentic, I don't think, for most people. And so the perfect place to be is on the same level. They're not above you, they're not below you. And because as entrepreneurs, we tend to go below sometimes if we're first-time founders, I think it helps to try and get above a little bit. Get above a little bit and take on a little bit of cockiness, take on a little bit of, why should I let you invest in my company? And see what that feels like, so you can dial in being on even footing with investors. Because really, this is a long-term relationship. You're going to be in relationship with these people for 5 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years, who knows how long. You can't divorce them. It's not like a spouse where you can someone invests in your company, you're in with them for a long period of time. So you really do want to interview them, figure out what they're about, who they are as a person, and establish that one-on-one footing with them in every interaction that you have. This would be my answer to that one.
Yeah, there's a kind of piggyback question on this from Seren. Is if one investor wants to see the other's term sheet, how can we both be polite and say no?
Yeah, I like the answer. I would go pitch VCs and they'd be who else are you talking to? And my answer would be, I don't think you'd like me telling other people that I'm meeting with you, and I'm going to extend the other people I'm meeting with the same courtesy. So I'm not going to discuss who else I'm talking to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Does that answer the question? The term sheet thing is
the other thing too, term sheets usually have things built into the term sheet that you're technically not supposed to show this to other people.
Right.
So you can also blame the term sheet as well.
Yeah.
But in general, that's the best of the thing. You want to be respectful of everybody else. A lot of these people don't want to know that they're investing. They don't want others to know, for example, right? So
yeah. And that's kind of a, you know, it's bad form in a way for investors to ask, well, who else are you talking to?
Yep.
And it's probably, it's like a test of your savvy as an entrepreneur. And so like, who else are you talking to? It's like, you know, I'm talking to a lot of people, and just for privacy reasons, I'm not going to discuss who else in specifics I'm talking to.
So I'm going to paraphrase your question here, Igor, but basically I had a pretty successful meeting, but during the conversation, there was a question about like revenue projections, which is something that they don't have, like some that haven't gone real deep. You have revenue projections because you went through FI, Igor, but they're not like super deep, right? So how you know, relevant are these, and how important are these from your experience?
I mean, I think it's pretty easy to put together a revenue projection, and you can be certain in the uncertainty of them. You can say, here's the low, medium, and high scenario that we anticipate. And I think it's important, I think it's crucial that you thought through the details of why you picked those numbers and be able to explain them. So that seems like an example of, they asked you something, you didn't have it handled, so you did your best in the meeting, but now it's probably best to nail down revenue projections that you believe in and that you feel certain in, and have those answers for every meeting that you do go forward.
Yeah, and most good investors will know that your revenue projections are BS. What they really care about is the underlying assumptions, which is what Will could just talked about. That's the key, right?
Yeah, like, have you thought about the size of the market and how you're going to get to it, and how fast you're going to be able to scale, and how much that's going to cost you, and how many people you're going to need to hire, and like all that stuff. You want to have thought through all of that.
Is there a checklist to understand if people are a good match for investors, or is this just a gut feeling?
Yeah, in Get Funded, I have two exercises. One is a certainty assessment, or sorry, one is a values assessment. So I get people to list out their values, and you want investors to be a match for your values. Like you want to partner with people that you want to be in business with, like that you want to hang out with, be with, that believe in what you believe in. Like if you're creating this company to accomplish some certain social mission, you want your investors ideally to believe in that social mission too. So I would say it's like alignment with you. Like how aligned do they feel with what you're trying to achieve and why you're doing it? And then the other one is we do an investor avatar exercise where you actually create an avatar for the perfect investor and why they would invest. And then when you're interviewing people, you're trying to figure out, does this person fit my avatar? Like, are they a match for what I'm looking for?
You know, Miguel asked, what happens if you create more interest than you expected, and you have to start turning angels down? Is this counterproductive and will it hurt you down the line?
No, no, no. That's the best case scenario. The best case scenario is that you're fielding phone calls from people who are begging you to invest, and this does happen. Like, I had a friend of a friend who invested in Uber in one of their rounds, and they got an intro to Travis, the CEO. And, by email, he's like, I'll let you invest if you never email or call me, is what he said. And the person was like, okay, I'm in, because everybody wanted into that deal. Like the ideal scenario is you run the raise so that you sign on a lead. And I talk about this a lot more in Get Funded Up. I'll make some of the lessons free and just send them out. I'll send them to you, Mike, so you can send them to everybody.
Okay.
The answers on this. But basically, the ideal way for a raise to go is you find a lead and you sign them on while you're getting a lot of other angels and interested and excited, getting a lot of people excited at the same time. And then you open the raise at some point, or something happens, and basically you get everybody being like, I want in, like, I'm scared I'm going to miss out. If you can get people a little bit worried that they might miss out, that's the ideal scenario, because you have the pull of your opportunity and you have the push of the FOMO, like the fear of missing out. And often raises that get subscribed all at once will go over because people want in. They see everybody else jumping in. They don't want to miss out. And then you can oversubscribe and let them in. Or if you really don't want to take more money, you can say, sorry, we're full. I'll let you know if we open up another raise. My advice would be to almost always take more, because things always cost more and take longer than you think. I know that from personal experience. So it's like I heard Fred Wilson had a quote: when the hors d'oeuvre tray at the party comes around, like take two, because you don't know when that's going to come around again. You don't know.
100% agree. 100% agree. We're at the top of the hour now, so I'm going to maybe do two more questions. How many meetings max should we have to get an investor excited prior to determining fit and pitching?
Well, I would try to determine the fit right up front. Like, you don't want to waste your time. So you want to make sure, like, up front, do they have actual cash that they're looking to invest? Like in the first call, like if you're talking with a fund, where are you in your fund? Are you investing right now? You want to find that out up front. Or with an angel, how many angel investments have you made, and what's the typical size? And how many more are you looking to make this year? Like, qualify them first so you don't waste your time. One of my clients just flew out to Colorado and went to meet with this family office, and then met with them again. And then they finally gave him an answer. They're like, okay, we'd like to invest $5,000. And he thought it was going to be like 150 or 200,000. And so he wasted his time to come and do this meeting, when if it was for $5,000, like, he wouldn't have come and done it. And that's happened to me a number of times as well. So I'd say qualify first. And if they're qualified, if there's someone who's going to invest over your minimum, and they're actively investing, then start to get them excited and figure out, like, don't waste your time. Your time is valuable as a founder. Don't do multiple meetings where you haven't discussed, where you haven't qualified them. So I'd say qualify them right away. And then I think there's another rule of fundraising that unfortunately I've been through, is like, the more meetings that people have with you, the less likely they are to invest. I don't know if, Mike, you have the same experience.
100%. If you're getting to the sixth meeting, then it's just not going to happen.
No, it's like the best, the best ones for me was someone would call me and say, hey, I talked to so-and-so, like one of your other investors, tell me a bit about Kandara. And I'd tell them, and then they'd say, okay, I'm in for 50K. And I'd be like, great, I'll send you the docs. Boom. Like, those are the ones that I loved and that I like to focus on. The ones where they're doing multiple meetings, like, I would say even 3 is probably like max.
All right. Final question here. How important is the profile and the terms with the first investor?
Profile meaning, like, who they are?
I'm going to just kind of, I don't know what Rajesh is asking here, but I'm guessing like the type, like, who they are, what they invest in, things like that.
The first investor, it's super important. It's the most important. Often the lead of the round, or the first big investor, is the person that might end up on your board, or you might be looking to for more capital in the next raise. So that's the most important thing. And in Get Funded, I talk about this, is you want to interview, like, the first step of any fundraise is finding somebody who's going to be the first mover. And you want that person to be really excited about you, really excited about the company, really aligned with what you're doing, because they're going to be the person that the later investors are going to look to and look to for signaling. So you want somebody who really gets it, who you jive with, who you feel great chemistry with, and who you're going to want to use to help get other people excited. So I think as you're at the beginning of a fundraise, it can feel overwhelming or hard because you haven't met that person yet. And the best way to meet that person is to meet a lot of people who meet your investor profile, who match your avatar, who match your values. Like, I think somebody said fundraising is a sorting problem. It's like you're sorting through people to find the people who are excited about your market, are excited about you, are into what you're into and what your company's about. And when you find those people, you'll feel a connection. And then the best thing to do is to meet 3 or 4 people that are all excited to be the first mover or the lead, and then kind of pit them all against each other at the same time, so that one or more of them gets a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, and they jump in and agree to lead the round.
Amazing. Yeah, we agree 100%. And that's why we have everybody here trying to run a process where you're talking to lots of people and figuring this out. Will, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Well, unfortunately, that's how it goes sometimes, guys. Like, we can't get to every single question here in the chat room. Will's time's valuable, so we can't go beyond this. At this point, we're already 5 minutes over, so I'm sorry. Sorry, Will. But look, thank you so much for doing this. This was terrific. You're going to get a recording of this, and I'll try to answer any other questions that come up in Slack. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good luck. And email me if you want at will@foundersgetfunded.com. Happy to answer more questions and see what you guys are working on.
Amazing. Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.